I want to talk briefly about Angular elements and how they're a bit different from jQuery elements, and also a little bit about the compile function, but not too much technical detail, just enough to get your brain going. So here I have a dumb password element with a template of hello world, and basically this is just to check that it's working. But what I want to do is make this a template that has two things nested inside of it. So the first thing will be an input with a type of text and ng model of, say, model input. Then the next one can be a div that just has the model input showing. So if I refresh here, let's just type something. All right, so we're good to go. You can see that we have dumb password wrapping our div, and then input and div inside of that div. One thing I'm going to do here, I've never talked about this before, but I'm going to say replace and just say true here, because what that's going to do is, watch when I refresh, you'll see that the dumb password has gone away, and now it's simply replacing dumb password with that div. So whereas before this was wrapped with dumb password, now it's just the div. This is going to make it a little bit easier to go into the children of the div in just a second here, because what I want to do is when the password equals the word password, we'll do a little alert thing there. So we'll say our linking function, we're going to say scope watch. There's another thing I haven't talked about, but it's pretty easy to set up. This just means we're going to watch model input, and when it changes we can check the value for whatever we want. So we'll say if value equals the word password, then console log change it or something. All right, so we'll type in here, say password, and our console said change it. Yep. Did it again. Okay, so that's working. So what we want to do is dive into our element and change a class on an element inside of our template. So what we could do right now is just say element and then get the children, and then get the children, and that'll be the first one because we want to grab this guy, and then say toggle class and alert box and alert. Now this I think is a terrible way of doing this. Actually, I believe I did that wrong. Whoops, password. There we go. So I didn't have to dive into that first level. Sorry, I got confused with replace for just a second there. All right, so we dove into it and grabbed the second element. So this was the first one, this one's the second one. And then toggled the class of alert box, or just added the class onto it. Now this is kind of a nasty way of looking this element up, because typically, like in jQuery, you would use something like find, and you would use a selector to find it, or find by ID and things like that. But that's actually not supported in AngularJS. That's more for reasons of testing and things like that. But what we can do is get a reference to the element before we even put it on the DOM. So what I'm going to do is create our element in here. So let's look into our template, and then I'm going to grab this guy, delete him, and then I'm going to create an Angular element from him. Whoops. We'll just call it valid element or something like that, and use Angular element to create an element from the string. And then we're going to talk about I'm going to talk about the compile function, and this is when I'm going to do it. So the compile function takes your template stuff. So this will be our template element. We'll say TL, LM or whatever. And then from here, we can just append our, what do we call it, valid element onto it. Now I'm going to delete our linking function real quick. You'll see him make a comeback really soon. But for right now, you can see that this is still working. It's still bound. We have a reference to the valid element. We appended to our template, but we lost all the scope stuff. So we need to rewire up the scope stuff. And what I'm going to do here is return a linking function from the compile function. So we can't reference a linking function inside of our object here anymore. We have to actually return it from here. So we could just do this, return, and then everything should be wired up. Wired, or I guess password is what I want to type. So you can see that it's still looking up the element by element children1, and instead what we can do now, instead of saying element children1, I can just say valid element. So now I can say password, and you can see that valid element is a reference to that actual element. You know, we're not searching for it, we're not finding it, we're not using a select or anything. We have an actual reference to the element itself, and we can apply any sort of adding classes or manipulate it however we want to. We actually don't even need this reference to the element to do that sort of stuff, because we have a full reference to the element there. Just one note here before I finish, just to keep this a bit cleaner. I typically do something like this, where I just say this link is that, whoops, is that, I guess I copied. Let's paste from history. It's this one. And then from there, I can just say return link instead of returning a function inside of there. And that'll, this will still work. All right, so now we have, just to quickly review, there's nothing to show in here. It's just the component itself. So we have a restrict, which is an element. It's going to replace the entire thing. So that's not wrapped in. If we look at the elements, this isn't wrapped in the dummy or the dumb password. It's just the div with the two classes inside, or the two elements inside of it. During the compile phase, we are appending him onto our template. That's right here. So this is our template, and we're just appending the valid element in there. And then from there on out, all we're doing is watching for that input to change. When it does change, we have a reference to the element, and we can toggle the class or whatever we want to on that element itself. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll go into more detail on things like scope watch and Angular element and the compile phase in future videos. But for right now, hopefully that clears some things up for you.